Under the scorching sun of the New Mexico Territory, Red River Jack rode into the town of Dusty Forks, his eyes set on the horizon and his mind on the legend that could change his fate. He dismounted outside the creaky doors of the Last Chance Saloon, the map burning a hole in his pocket. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and whispered secrets. Jack knew this was the place where his adventure would begin, and with a determined stride, he approached the barkeep. "I'm looking for a man who knows these parts better than his own shadow," Jack declared. "I hear you're the one to talk to about a certain treasure." The barkeep, an old man with a weathered face and a twinkle in his eye, chuckled and motioned for Jack to take a seat. As they shared a bottle of whiskey, the old man began to spin a tale of ancient maps and buried gold, of lost cities and ruthless outlaws. He spoke of a man who went by the name of Diego, a legendary guide who could lead the way to the treasure. But, he warned, the road would not be easy. It would test their mettle, their courage, and their faith in each other. As the day turned to dusk, Jack found himself standing outside the saloon once more, the old man's words echoing in his ears. He knew that if he wanted to save his family's ranch, he had no choice but to embark on this treacherous journey. With a deep breath, he steeled himself for the adventure that lay ahead and turned to face the desert. In the distance, he could just make out the figure of a man, a Native American warrior with a sword strapped to his back. As they locked eyes, Jack knew that he had found his guide. Together, they would face the dangers of the Wild West and uncover the secrets of the lost city of El Dorado. Their journey began with a series of strange omens and eerie whispers in the wind. They rode for hours, the heat of the sun beating down upon their backs, the dry earth cracking beneath their horses' hooves. As they crested a small hill, they caught sight of a ghost town in the distance, its buildings crumbling and abandoned. A chill ran down Jack's spine as they approached, for he knew that this was where the outlaws had made their base. As they dismounted, the two men drew their weapons, ready for whatever awaited them. They crept silently through the town, avoiding loose boards and creaking doors. Suddenly, a figure leapt out from behind a crumbling saloon, a pistol in his hand. It was one of the outlaws, and he had been waiting for them. Before Jack could react, Diego lunged forward, his sword flashing through the air. The outlaw fell to the ground with a gasp, blood pooling around him. For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the shadows, hoarse laughter echoed through the streets. The outlaws had been expecting them. They emerged from behind buildings and alleys, brandishing their weapons and closing in on the two men. Jack felt a surge of panic rise within him, but he saw the calm determination in Diego's eyes and found strength in it. They fought back to back, moving in perfect harmony as if they had been doing it their entire lives. The outlaws, caught off guard by their unity, struggled to keep up. Blows were exchanged, pistols were fired, and swords clashed in a frenzy of violence. Despite the odds stacked against them, Jack and Diego began to gain the upper hand. The outlaws fell one by one, their cries of pain and fear filling the air. With each victory, Jack felt a newfound respect for Diego grow within him. It was then that he realized that he had made the right choice. He had trusted Diego, and together they would see this through to the end. Finally, when the last outlaw lay dead in the dust, Jack and Diego stood shoulder to shoulder, their chests heaving from exertion. They looked at each other, understanding dawning in their eyes. They had faced their first real challenge together, and they had emerged stronger for it. The road ahead would undoubtedly be full of more obstacles and dangers, but they knew that they could face them side by side. And with each step they took, they drew closer to the fabled treasure of El Dorado, and the freedom it would bring for Jack and his family. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light across the landscape, they paused to rest their horses and gather their thoughts. It was then that Diego confessed something that he had kept hidden until now. "Jack," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "there is something I must tell you." He hesitated, his gaze flickering momentarily before returning to meet Jack's expectant stare. "El Dorado, it is not just a legend to me. It is not just a treasure I seek. It is home." Jack was taken aback by the intensity of Diego's words. "Your ancestors," he ventured, not quite sure how to phrase the question. Diego nodded, a wistful expression crossing his face. "They were among those who built it, Jack. They were the ones who brought its secrets to the New World. They believed that El Dorado was a symbol of hope, of a better future for all of us. And now, with the city lost and its people scattered, it is my duty to find it, to protect it, and to bring it back to its former glory." The weight of Diego's words hung heavily in the air between them. For Jack, the revelation brought a newfound respect for his companion, and a deeper understanding of the bond that had formed between them. They were not just partners in this quest, they were kindred spirits, united by blood and destiny. And together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, until they stood once more before the gates of El Dorado, and reclaimed what was rightfully theirs. As night fell over the treacherous landscape, they made camp for the first time since leaving their homes. The horses grazed contentedly nearby, while Jack and Diego sat beside a crackling fire, sharing stories of their past and their hopes for the future. Despite the hardship they had endured, there was an air of camaraderie and brotherhood that filled the air. Diego's words about his ancestors and their connection to El Dorado continued to echo in Jack's mind. He couldn't help but wonder what it must have been like for them, to build such a city from scratch, to harness its secrets and wield its power. It was a thought that filled him with awe and inspiration. As they sat by the fire, Jack felt a newfound respect for Diego, not just as his companion on this quest, but as a fellow seeker of truth and guardian of history. He knew that together, they could overcome any obstacle, and that their bond would only grow stronger as they delved deeper into the mysteries of El Dorado. The night was peaceful, with the crackling fire casting flickering shadows across the faces of the two adventurers. The horses, sensing their master's contentment, grazed quietly nearby. It was a moment of respite in the midst of their perilous journey, a brief interlude where they could forget the dangers that lurked just beyond the firelight and simply be together. But as they sat there, lost in thought, Jack couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anticipation. The map was a clue, yes, but it was only a starting point. They still had to navigate the temple, avoid its deadly traps, and ultimately uncover the secrets that lay hidden within its walls. The thought filled him with equal parts excitement and trepidation. Diego must have sensed his friend's internal struggle, for he reached over and placed a reassuring hand on Jack's shoulder. "We've faced many challenges together already," he said, his voice steady and calm. "And we've come through them stronger for it. Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it side by side." Jack nodded, his gaze meeting Diego's. "El Dorado is our destiny," he replied, his voice firm with resolve. "And we will not rest until we've claimed what is ours." As the last words hung in the air, they both knew that the road ahead would be long and arduous. But with their bond forged in the fires of adversity, they also knew that they would face whatever lay ahead together, and that together, they could not be stopped. The horses sensed the change in the air as well, and seemed to grow more alert and attentive. They snorted softly, their coats gleaming in the moonlight as they shifted their weight from foot to foot. Jack reached out to pat one of the animals gently on its flank, feeling the warmth and strength radiating from its muscles. He turned to Diego, his eyes gleaming with determination. "Are you ready for this, my friend?" he asked. Diego nodded solemnly, his own gaze fixed on the path ahead. "I have been ready for this since the day I was born," he replied, his voice steady and strong. "Our ancestors have waited long enough for us to reclaim what is rightfully ours. Let us make haste, my brother." With that, they rose to their feet and began to gather their belongings, carefully rolling out their bedding and folding up their blankets. The horses, sensing that it was time to move on, nuzzled their masters affectionately before turning to follow them down the trail. As they walked, Jack and Diego fell into a comfortable rhythm, their footsteps in sync with each other's, their breathing matching as well. The temple loomed before them, its ancient stone walls casting eerie shadows that danced across the ground. The air seemed to thicken as they approached, as if the very stones themselves were alive with anticipation. Jack felt his heart race in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm, to focus on the task at hand. The map had given them a general idea of where to start, but from there it was up to them to navigate the temple's twisting corridors and deadly traps on their own. They would have to rely on their wits, their skills, and most of all, their trust in each other to succeed. As they stood before the great doors that guarded the temple's entrance, Jack turned to Diego, his eyes meeting his friend's. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Diego's gaze did not waver. "Always," he replied, his voice steady and strong. And with that, they stepped forward together, into the heart of the temple, and into the midst of the greatest adventure of their lives. The doors groaned as they swung open, revealing a dimly lit corridor stretching off into the distance. Torches flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced and writhed as if alive. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and something else, something ancient and musty. Jack and Diego exchanged a quick glance, their eyes darting over the carvings that adorned the walls. The reliefs depicted scenes of bloody battles, ancient rulers, and strange creatures that seemed to defy explanation. They moved slowly down the corridor, their senses on high alert, their hands hovering near their weapons. As they turned a corner, they were greeted by a massive stone door, sealed shut with a large and intricate lock. The map indicated that this was the entrance to the temple's inner sanctum, where the treasure of El Dorado was said to be hidden. "You take point this time," Diego whispered to Jack, nodding towards the door. "You're better with locks than I am." Jack nodded, stepping forward cautiously. He crouched down next to the door, examining the lock with a critical eye. The mechanism was intricate and ancient, unlike anything he had seen before. He ran his fingers over the smooth metal, feeling for any irregularities or weaknesses, but found nothing. His heart began to race as he realized that they might be in over their heads. He glanced back at Diego, who was watching him intently, and forced a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I'll figure it out." With renewed determination, Jack closed his eyes and began to mentally review everything he knew about locks and their mechanisms. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn toolkit. He selected a thin metal pick and carefully inserted it into the keyhole, feeling for the tumblers that would need to be lifted to open the door. The tension in the air was palpable as Jack worked, his every move agonizingly slow. He could feel Diego's eyes boring into the back of his head, could sense the anticipation and fear building within him. But he forced himself to focus, to ignore everything but the task at hand. After what seemed like an eternity, Jack felt the tumblers click into place. With a shaking hand, he turned the handle and pulled the door open. A blast of musty air greeted them, carrying with it the faint sound of running water. Before them lay a darkened chamber, its walls adorned with strange glowing symbols that pulsed with an otherworldly light. In the center of the room, a massive stone altar stood, its surface covered in glittering gold and precious gems. Diego gasped, his eyes widening in disbelief. "It's real," he whispered. "It's actually real." Jack nodded, unable to tear his gaze away from the treasure before them. "It's real," he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. "And it's ours, Diego. Our hard work, our determination. We did it." They stepped forward, approaching the altar cautiously. As they drew closer, they saw that the surface of the altar was not as smooth as it had appeared from a distance. Rather, it was carved with intricate designs, each one seeming to glow with an inner light. The gems and gold were inlaid into these designs, creating a dazzling, almost hypnotic pattern. "I think we need to find a way to unlock the altar," Diego whispered, running his fingers over the carvings. "It looks like these designs might be some sort of combination lock." Jack nodded in agreement, his mind racing as he tried to figure out the pattern. He glanced around the room, taking in every detail, searching for any clue that might help them solve the puzzle. As he scanned the walls, his eyes were drawn to a particular section of the carvings, where a series of symbols seemed to form a pattern. He pointed it out to Diego. "What if it's like this?" he asked, tracing the pattern with his finger. "What if we have to use these symbols from the wall as a combination?" Diego frowned, studying the carving and the symbols on the wall. "It could be," he said slowly. "But which symbols should we use?" Jack shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe we just try them until we get it right." They both looked at each other, then back at the altar. With a deep breath, Jack began to try the symbols one by one, slowly turning the carved knob at the center of the altar as he went. After several tries, he felt it click into place. With a triumphant shout, he yanked the lid off the altar, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside, glittering treasures spilled out, golden statues, jeweled crowns, and precious gems of every color imaginable. "It's all ours," Jack breathed, his voice cracking with emotion. "We did it!" He turned to Diego, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared triumph. They embraced tightly, laughing and crying at the same time. The weight of their journey, the sacrifices they had made, the obstacles they had overcome, seemed to lift from their shoulders in that moment. "It's beautiful," Diego whispered, running his fingers over the golden statues and precious gems. "It's beyond anything we could have ever imagined." Together, they continued to explore the hidden compartment, marveling at the treasures before them. They sorted through the gold and jewels, each taking a small memento of their incredible adventure. They filled their pockets with gems, wrapping the rest in scraps of cloth and tying them around their waists. As they worked, they heard footsteps approaching from the corridor outside. They exchanged worried glances, quickly stuffing the remaining treasures back into the compartment. Jack slammed the lid shut and replaced the lid on the altar, trying to regain their composure. A hooded figure appeared in the doorway, a staff in hand. "Ah, I see you found it," the figure said, voice barely above a whisper. "You must be the ones we've been waiting for." Jack and Diego exchanged confused glances, unsure of what to say or do. The figure stepped forward, pulling back her hood to reveal a young woman with long, flowing hair and eyes as green as emeralds. "I am the guardian of this treasure," she explained, her voice calm and reassuring. "It has been waiting for someone brave enough to claim it. You have proven yourselves worthy." She held out her hand, offering them a choice of jewels. "Take one of these as a token of my gratitude and a reminder of your courage. Then, you must return the treasure to its rightful place, hidden once more from those who would use it for evil." Jack and Diego hesitated for a moment, uncertain of what to do. But as they looked into the young woman's trusting eyes, they knew they could trust her. They took the jewels she offered, feeling the weight of their significance in their hands. "Thank you," they said in unison. "We will return the treasure and make sure it is kept safe." The guardian nodded, her face serene. "I have faith in you," she said softly. "The world needs more heroes like you." With a final nod, she turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving the two friends alone once more. They stood there for a moment, taking in the weight of the jewels in their hands and the significance of their journey. "Well," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I guess this means we have to find our way back out of here." They began to make their way back through the maze of tunnels, their steps a little lighter now that they didn't have the weight of the treasure on their shoulders. As they walked, they occasionally glanced at the jewels they had been given, feeling a new sense of purpose and responsibility. They knew that they had been chosen for this task, and that they had been given a gift greater than anything they could have ever imagined. The tunnels wound on, and they soon found themselves back at the entrance they had discovered earlier. The moon hung high in the sky, bathing the landscape in a soft, silver light. They emerged from the tunnel and looked out over the sea of stars, feeling a sense of awe and gratitude washing over them. "You know," Diego said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I think we should keep our promises to the Guardian. We should find a way to return the treasure to its rightful place, and make sure it's kept safe from those who would use it for evil." Jack nodded, his eyes shining in the moonlight. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "We can't just keep this for ourselves. We have to be the heroes we were meant to be." Together, they turned and made their way back toward the village, their steps lighter and their hearts full. As they walked, they discussed the plan to return the treasure to its rightful place and ensure it was kept safe. They knew it wouldn't be an easy task, but they also knew they couldn't leave it in the hands of those who would use it for evil. Days turned into weeks, and they spent their time preparing for the journey ahead. They sought out the wisdom of elders and sages, learning about the history of the treasure and the people who had once protected it. They trained in martial arts and learned how to navigate the treacherous terrain that lay ahead. Finally, the day came when they set out on their quest. The sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink as they made their way through the village gates. They bid farewell to their friends and family, promising to return soon with the treasure and restore peace to their world. As they journeyed deeper into the wilderness, they faced many challenges. They crossed treacherous rivers, climbed towering mountains, and navigated through dense forests filled with dangerous creatures. They learned to trust each other and work together, relying on each other's strengths and weaknesses to overcome adversity. One day, they found themselves standing before a massive stone door embedded in the side of a cliff. It was guarded by ancient spirits, who challenged them to prove their worthiness before allowing them entry. After a tense standoff, they managed to convince the spirits that they meant no harm and were merely seeking to protect the treasure. The spirits relented, and the door swung open, revealing a chamber filled with shining gold and sparkling jewels. With trembling hands, they retrieved the treasure and carefully placed it within a hidden chamber deep within the mountain. They sealed the entrance behind them, ensuring that only those who were worthy could ever find it again. As they stood there, looking upon their handiwork, they knew that they had fulfilled their promise to the guardian and to their world. They spent the rest of their lives traveling the land, using the knowledge they had gained from their journey to help others and make the world a better place. Their names were spoken in whispers of reverence and awe, and they became the heroes they had always dreamed of being. But they never forgot the lessons they had learned along the way, and they never took their responsibility lightly. One day, many years after they had returned the treasure to its rightful place, they found themselves standing atop a hill, gazing out over a lush green valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As they watched, a flock of birds took flight, their wings catching the light as they danced through the air. "You know," Diego said, his voice thoughtful, "I sometimes wonder if we really made the right choice. If there wasn't a better way to use that power for good." Jack smiled at his friend, the sun casting his features in a warm glow. "I've wondered that too," he admitted. "But I've come to believe that the choice we made was the right one. We protected the treasure and the people who depended on it. We became the heroes we were meant to be." They stood in silence for a while longer, watching the birds soar through the sky. Eventually, Jack turned to Diego and smiled. "You know, I think our guardian would be proud of us." Diego returned the smile, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and contentment. "I like to think so," he said. "I like to think so." As they continued to watch the birds, they knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be more people to help, more injustices to right, and more heroes to inspire. But for now, as the sun sank below the horizon, they could rest easy, knowing that they had done their best and made a difference in the world. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please visit my channel for more stories.